Welcome to the afternoon session, everyone. It's my great pleasure to introduce none other than Dr. Frank Islam. Frank Islam is a successful entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a civic leader who serves as chairman and CEO of FI Investment Incorporated in Washington, D.C. And he has a special commitment as a writer, and he has written wonderful articles in magazines all over in India, in US, in Pakistan, and many other countries. So he has a special commitment to educational, civic, and artistic causes. He serves on advisory boards and advisory councils of many important institutions, including the Kennedy Center Board of Trustees, the U.S. Institute of Peace, the Woodrow Wilson Center, and the Brookings Institution, among others that I am not listing for the reason of brevity. He also serves on various boards and councils at many universities, more than half a dozen universities, including Johns Hopkins University, American University, and George Mason University. Those who are at AMU are well aware that he has given a huge donation to his alma mater, and he has those strong bonds still. And Frank and Debbie Center of Management Studies, I was able to see last time I was visiting, and now he has also contributed another $500,000 plus for Mass Communication Center. So just it's too many things that his hands. I mean, he is from Azamgarh, and he has contributed a great deal to the development and educational needs of the population there. So we welcome Frank, and he is going to be speaking on nationalism, race, religion, politics, and the need to save democracy. Frank.
Thank you, Tariq, for introduction. So I just came here from Washington, D.C., despite the fact that we have an event. Yeah, this is my wife, Debbie. She'll be traveling with me to Aligarh Muslim University to inaugurate the Frank and Debbie Islam Auditorium in the Mass Communication Department, also the Innovation Center at the Management Complex. So I'm trying to figure out that I have enough light, but it seems to me the light is dimmer, just like the democracy dimmer in India and the United States. So, can you hear me, guys? Yes. So thank you, Tariq, for a wonderful introduction, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do to make a difference in people's lives. And thank you for your passion and commitment to education. You provide the example and set the standards. Both of us have an unbreakable bond that binds us together as an Aligarhian. And we have been infused and injected and instilled upon us the values of Aligarh. And both of us are linked by common goal, common cause, and common commitment. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for all you do. He's right. His father was my teacher, and one of the best teachers I ever had in my life. I'm deeply grateful for all he has done. So a little bit about my own personal story before I go to my speech here. Professor Kazmi, his father, introduced me to a professor named Throne, Wolfgang Throne, who came from the University of Colorado when I was just a student, a young person. And I crossed the Atlantic Ocean to realize the American dream. I came here at the University of Colorado, graduated, and then I started my business, and I grew it to several $100 million. As a matter of fact, I subscribe to the notion where President Kennedy once said, "To whom much is given, much is expected." It is much more rewarding to give than any money that I have made in my life. So thank you very much for your kind introduction. I want to express my deep gratitude to Anil. Anil, thank you very much for being here. And where's Sultana? Thank you, Sultana, for being here. And thank you, let me see if I can get Hassan Kamal for suggesting my name to be a speaker on this occasion. Thank you very much for all you do. And Hassan also is an Ligurian, and he has done a great job, not only for Aligarh, but for many, many other things that he has done. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to be here. Before I give my remark, I want to say a few words regarding the Aligarh Muslim University. It is a true and timeless treasure. It is a precious possession. AMU has always been the beacon of hope, aspirations, and dream. What's best in me, I owe it to Aligarh Muslim University. This is where my journey began, and it shaped my story and determined my destiny. Its principles have always guided me throughout my life during the time of calm and the crisis. As you all know, the Aligarh shaped India, and India shaped Aligarh. My days at Aligarh Muslim University had a profound effect on me. It instilled core values that have served me in good stead throughout my life. Those values continue to be my guiding principles. My AMU education was a bridge to the future. It was an opportunity creator. The thought of Aligarh still lingers in my mind. It has never faded away from my memory. It's still fresh in my heart, in my thought, in my spirit, as it was long years ago. I must confess, though, having so many professors in the audience is a bit intimidating. For you, Professor, I say, please do not ask me any question. My math skills are not quite as good as they were when I attended the Aligarh Muslim University and left India to come to the United States of America to realize the American dream, to go to school in computer science at the University of Colorado. Indeed, when I got my education in India and the US, the slide rule was the tool of choice for calculations, and when you said computer, you meant mainframe. Pocket calculations and laptops were in their primary, and using an iPhone or some other cellular device for calculating, computing, or communicating had not even been conceptualized. That said, when I was invited to participate in this workshop, I was advised that the topic for my remarks should be nationalism, race, politics, and religion, and the impact of those four factors on academic institutions in India and the United States. I immediately thought there was a mouthful, and it would take me a lifetime of research and writing to address those four topics or factors appropriately. Then, as I reflected more upon it, I concluded that I have something to say on these topics, but to do so, I needed to add another topic, that is democracy. This is because democracy puts those other topics in the context for a meaningful and profound discussions. My invitation to speak here at the Ohio State University requested that I deliver a lecture. Well, I know lectures come naturally to you professors. That is not the case for a layperson like myself. However, lectures are not my style. and not a skill set. I'm confident, though, in providing my ideas, ideals, and thoughts. That is why I've titled my talk, Thoughts on Nationalism, Race, Politics, Religion, and the Need to Save Democracy. In sharing my thoughts, I will begin with an overview of the state of democracy in the United States, India, and the world. Move on to look at nationalism, race, politics, and religion, and their impact upon the nature of democracy in the United States of America and India. I'll conclude by examining what the current climate means for higher education and what those in higher education should do to respond to the current conditions. I will share with you my thoughts not as an expert on any of those topics, nor as an academic, nor as a researcher, but as a civically engaged Indian American business person whose motherland is India and whose homeland is the United States of America. I love both countries and recognize they are by far the two largest democracies in the world. We have a shared interest and shared values. And the future of those democracies is central to the future of democracies and the democratic values worldwide. Let me also add, my story can only happen in America. It's America's inclusiveness and openness that provided me the letters of opportunity to succeed. These are the strengths, values, and qualities of America that all of us can proudly and truly embrace. With that thought, let me start by focusing on state democracy in the world today. Sadly, I must say, the state is not good. In fact, it could be called awful. When Freedom House released its report, Freedom in the World 2018, it declared that democracy was in crisis, saying for the 12th consecutive year, political rights and civil liberty declined, and that 71 countries suffered net declines and only 35% registered gains. Things have not gotten any better in the past year. Freedom House report, Freedom in the World 2019, declared democracy was in retreat, with 68 countries showing net decline. In this 21st century, democracy is descending and autocracy is ascending in countries around the world. In addition to Freedom House findings, numerous other studies are showing that trend. For example, a Pew Research Center survey last year of citizens in 38 countries found only, and I quote, a shallow commitment to representative democracy, and a substantial percentage is willing to consider non-democratic options across all of those countries. That is a lot of abstract and conceptual. Let me bring it up close and personal by focusing on the two countries of my heritage, United States of America and India. The Pew study found that in the United States, 40% of the respondents were fully committed to representative democracy, 46% were less committed, and 77% preferred a non-democratic option. That's not very good, but it is exceptional compared to the findings for India. The Pew study disclosed that of all the countries surveyed, support to the strong leader who's unchecked by the judiciary or parliament is highest in India. Only 8% of the Indian respondents were fully committed to representative democracy, 67% were less committed, and 9% preferred a non-democratic option. India and the United States are the world's two largest democracies. Active and engaged citizenship is essential to keep those democracy vital and vibrant and exemplar for democracy worldwide. The Pew finding, in conjunction with other studies that I have reviewed, indicate that citizenship support for democracy eroding rather than increasing. To a large extent, the erosion has been driven by polarizing nationalism, identity politics, blatant racism, and religious discrimination, hostility, and prejudice. Let me address those areas, beginning with the nationalism. Nationalism has become a hot topic for political leaders, the media, and academic journals over the past few years. Foreign Affairs magazine devoted much of its March-April issue to articles in a section titled The New Nationalism. Some of those articles point out the word nationalism is being mischaracterized and misapplied. I will explain why and say more about this later in my talk. For now, let me describe the primary types of the alternative nationalism, what I call pseudo-nationalism, that are divisive to a nation, a state, rather than unifying. Those types are white nationalism and the religious nationalism. White nationalism is a dominant in the United States of America. Religious nationalism is a dominant in India. In October of 2018, at a rally for United States Senator Ted Cruz in Texas, President Trump proudly proclaimed himself a nationalist. After that, Trump reaffirmed his proclamation in an interview with Fox News host Laura Ingraham, in which he explained, and I quote, "I look at two things, globalists and nationalists. I am somebody that wants to take care of our country because of many, many years our leaders have been worried more about the world than they have about the United States of America, and they leave us in a mess. I'm proud of this country. I call that nationalism. I call it being a nationalist and do not see any other connotation than that. The President of the United States might not have seen it in any other connotation, but many knowledgeable observers and commentators did. His defining himself as a nationalist evoked a firestorm of criticism, mostly centering around the fact that the choice of and the emphasis on the word nationalist may possibly be a dog whistle to Trump's base and supporters, signifying and reinforcing his commitment to a discriminatory and exclusionary United States of America. More recently, in July of this year, Trump evoked an even bigger firestorm of criticism with what has been called his racist tweets, in which he said that 4 Democratic women of color in the United States Congress should go back to those countries of origin. This followed by campaign rallying in North Carolina, in which a Trump supporter shouted, "Send her back," after he made disparaging and attacking remarks regarding one of the Congresswomen, Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, pushed the white nationalism and white nationalist accusation to the boiling point. Religious nationalism in India seems relatively mild in comparison to the white nationalism in the United States. Nonetheless, it is insidious and dangerous to the very essence of a secular democracy. Religious extremism and religious nationalism in India is alarming and concerning to all of us in the world because it does not represent the values the character and conscience of a nation that has become a global beacon of hope for democracy around the world. Milan Vaishnav highlighted those dangers in his monograph, Religious Nationalism and India's Future, published by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in April of this year during India's election cycle. In his monograph, Vaishnav addressed the emergence and the growth of the BJP and its desire to make Hindu nationalism equivalent to Indian nationalism. He points out, while religious nationalist movements exhibit considerable variation, they share many common attributes. First, most religious parties possess a puritanical streak that colors their electoral platforms and subsequent methods of governance with a moral cadence. Second, in many countries, religious nationalism uses moral appeals and rhetoric to advocate for economic austerity or draconian anti-corruption measures. Third, religious politics often betrays a majoritarian nationalism which seeks to redefine the basis of national identity in a manner that excludes or marginalizes religious minorities. End of quotation. Since I'm on the topic of the overlap between religion and nationalism, let me spend a little bit of time here on religion in India and the United States. To my knowledge, Prime Minister Modi has never declared himself a nationalist. I'm certain that he would never declare himself a religious nationalism. Still, he's very proud of his religion, and there is an encroachment of it into the way he governs. This is evidenced by the plans to build a wide path from the Hindu Kashi Vishwanath to the Ganges River in Varanasi. I grew up in Varanasi, but I was born in Azamgarh. Even though Varanasi is a Hinduism's holiest city, but it is a place where youth of all religion work and play together because they were bound together in the service of others. I firmly believe and strongly believe that this interdenominational history should be maintained and recognized by placing stations of all religions along that path, not just the Hindu, but the Christians, Muslims, Jain, Sikh, and many other religions, the diversity that India is. Let me move from India to the United States. So let me move from India to the United States. The foremost religious groups supporting President Trump during his campaign in 2016 and in his re-election bids are evangelical Christians. This is not because President Trump is Christian himself. In fact, many individuals consider Trump to be a non-religious person who's either completely immoral or immoral in his personal behavior. This does not bother the evangelical Christians because he supports their stance against the abortion, which is the single political issue that matters the most to them. It is a wedge issue transcending everything else. This brings me to identify politics. The identity politics is where people are defined themselves by religion, by race, by sex, or some other characteristic. And then political campaigns are conducted and policy positions are created to respond to those characteristics. Noted political scientist Francis Fukuyama wrote a long article for Foreign Affairs in 2018 titled against identity politics. In that piece, he argues that politics of this type harms democracy. He further asserts that in the United States, perhaps the worst thing about left-wing identity politics, that would be Democrat, is that it has stimulated the rise of the right-wing identity politics, and that would be Republican. I do not know if that is the worst thing, but I do know that identity politics is the primary mode for communicating, legislating, is not the basis for healthy democracy, because it does not provide a solid framework for reaching common ground, achieving a compromise, or the building of consensus. I have now looked briefly at the intertwining of some forms of nationalism, politics, race, and religion, and the effect that they can produce for a democracy. A friend of mine, the conservative journalist Jonathan Goldberg, described the current situation in a book published last year titled Suicide of the West: How the Rebirth of Tribalism, Populism, Nationalism, and Identity Politics is Destroying American Democracy. As I have attempted to illustrate, it is not just the American democracy that is at risk, it is the Indian democracy. And the very conception of the democracy itself. If the democracy dies, the world as we know it and want to be will never be the same again. I may be overstating the case just a bit as we convene here at Ohio State University in September of 2019. There is a struggle for the head, the heart, and the soul of democracy. What did this mean for you as professors, as researchers, as academics? Or what role should and can you play in that struggle? Let me preface and qualify my comments in this regard by stating that I'm not on the ground and do not have an insider's perspective what it means to you individually. I've had the good fortune to visit Aligarh Muslim University on several occasions over the past decade and to speak at many institutions of higher education in India and the United States, and to also sit on several boards in the United States of America. So it is from that perspective that I offer my observations and recommendation. My overriding recommendation is simple and straightforward. It is to keep on keeping on, continue to do what you have been doing, because India and the United States needs you to be there now more than ever. As I have said before in other speeches, I see the role of higher education in this 21st century to be of that shaping studies, shaping students, and shaping society. Those of you in this audience know far better than I do what needs to be done to shape studies and students given the current environment. The one observation I will make is that I know there are critical needs to expand traditional and vocational and technical programs and opportunities for students in India, and to increase the outreach to women, to minorities, to socially economically disadvantaged, and others in the weaker sections. You professors can be the leaders in ensuring that these needs are addressed. By doing so, you'll be helping to shape society and Indian democracy through your civic engagement. As I have said earlier, the India is the largest democracy in the world. through your increased civic engagement and with the assistance of those from other institutions and organizations, you can enable India to become the leader of the world stage for democracy around the globe. So what's the civic engagement? The best definition of civic engagement that I have seen comes from a collection of reading called a title, Civic Responsibility in Higher Education. That definition states, civic engagement means writing to make a difference in the civic life of our communities and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make the meaningful difference. It means promoting the quality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. Sometimes when I say civic engagement, people say, I think I mean political engagement. I do not. Political engagement is a form of civic engagement, but just one form. In my opinion, civic engagement takes 5 primary forms. Individual engagement, organizational engagement, political engagement, community engagement, and social engagement. Let me define each of those forms briefly. Individual engagement is being the best one can be and personally responsible for one's actions. And organizational engagement is contributing to the success of the groups to which one belongs, such as the place where one works, the place where one worships, and the place of affiliations. Political engagement is participating in those processes that shape the structure and nature of government. Community engagement is collaborating to make the locale and the world in which we live a better place. Social engagement is advocating for justice and equality of treatment and opportunity for all. Let me springboard these 5 general forms of civic engagement to talk about 3 specific areas which you professors can assist in promoting. They are the Indian democracy, a unifying Indian nationalism, a state of interdependence. In May of this year, as the national elections in India were drawing to a close, I wrote an article published in the Economic Times titled May 23, A Day to Celebrate India's Democracy. In that article, I cited several sources on the unparalleled and unmatched scope and substantial strength of India's democracy. I concluded the article by stating, the Indian democracy is not perfect, far from it, but India's democracy shines as a beacon of light in a world that is becoming increasingly darker. India has the potential to become a champion of democracy around the globe. If it does realize their potential, it will bring about a new dawn for the democracy in the 21st century. Because of a unifying Indian nationalism and achieving a true state of independence, India can realize their potential. Near the outset of these remarks, I noted the word nationalism was being misapplied, misused, and mischaracterized. Because of that, alternative or pseudo forms of nationalism, such as white nationalism or religious nationalism, come to mind when people say nationalism. Those terms are not nationalism at all. In fact, they are the opposite. They are more populism, which is a political approach designed to appeal to a group of people based upon what they perceive to be their common interest. So the question remains, what is nationalism? The Webster Dictionary defines nationalism as loyalty and devotion for a nation, to a nation, especially a sense of national consciousness, exalting one nation above all others, and placing promotion of its culture, and interest as opposed to those of other nations. Patriotism is a form or twin of nationalism. Several years ago, the American historian Thomas Bender stated, and I quote, "Nations are, among other things, a collective agreement partly caused to affirm a common history as the basis for shared future." End of quotation. More recently, Andreas Wimmer, professor of sociology and political philosophy at Columbia University, wrote, "At their core, all forms of nationalism share the same two tenets. First, the members of the nation understood their group of equal citizens with a shared history and a future political destiny should rule the state. And second, they should do so in the interest of the nation. Nationalism is thus opposed to foreign rule by members of other nations, as in colonial empires and many dynastic kingdoms, as well as to rulers who disagree with the perspective and the needs of the majority." Each of those statements support the need for and importance of nationalism. India was founded with a strong sense of nationalism. Omid Shani, a scholar at the University of Haifa, explained that in her book, How India Became Democratic, Citizenship and Making the Universal Franchise. In her book, she details how India was established from the outset as a country empowering the entire and extremely diverse population as voters. In his Independence Day speech, Prime Minister Modi this year said and proclaimed, and I quote, "One nation and one constitution." This spirit has become a reality, and India is proud of it. End of quotations of Mr. Modi's speech on Independence Day. Prime Minister Modi is correct when he says that one nation, one constitution. And that should be the goal for the Indian democracy. The Prime Minister is incorrect, however, when he states this spirit has become a reality. Achieving the goal of a one nation requires unifying nationalism. What India has achieved through the increasing influence and control by the BJP over the past several years, instead, as I have described and discussed earlier in my presentation, is the religious nationalism. Many pundits, both in India and the free press around the world, have criticized the Modi administration's recent action in seizing control of Kashmir and revoking Article 370 and Article 35A of the Constitution, which gave considerable autonomy to Kashmir as an example of religious nationalism. The justification for this move was that Kashmir's autonomy have increased corruption and nepotism. There has undoubtedly been some corruption and nepotism in Kashmir through the years, as there has been throughout India and the States. I must confess, the question in my mind becomes why the radical step was taken to address this condition in India's only states with a Muslim majority. I do not know what is in the Prime Minister Modi's mind. I do know that this act does not bring India and the Indian people closer together as a one nation under God. That is why in 2020 and going forward, India needs to reinforce its commitment to unifying nationalism. One way it can be done is by stressing the interdependence of all the people of India, regardless of their race, religion, caste, creeds, background, and belief. For this Independence Day in India, I wrote an article published in several Indian newspapers titled, Celebrate Interdependence on Independence Day. That article is a bookend to my May 23 edition Election Day article I referenced earlier. The first article celebrating India's democracy was directed at recognizing that India has achieved. The second article celebrating Interdependence Day is directed at recognizing all that India can become. I began the Interdependence Day article as follows. My wish for India on this Independence Day is that it be used as a day to recognize and celebrate the interdependence of all Indians. This wish can be addressed by coming together to promote the unity of India as one nation under God on this important holiday. I close the article. These are the items on my wish list on this Independence Day. And I understand they'll be up to us as the mere mortals to pursue them. We can do that not by looking to the heavens and to the God whom we worship, but by looking at the earth and the people and the family that we are. We all have a role to play in that pursuit. Each and every citizen should engage in small acts of kindness by reaching out to those less fortunate and to the downtrodden, by extending a helping hand and hands up. Some people have a special contribution to make. Religious leaders should promote interfaith dialogue. They should bring together the followers of different persuasion for meaningful conversation. They should promote a dialogue of understanding and a shared sense of community with other faiths. They should call attention to the fact that attack on one faith is attack on all faith. When we attack each other based on the faith, we are tearing apart the harmonious fabric of a nation. Today, they are the victim. Tomorrow, someone else will be the victim. Political leaders should promote a framework of unity, civility, and decency. They should ensure that all laws are fair and fairly enforced. They should take affirmative actions to promote an atmosphere of communal peace and harmony. They should promote hope, not fear. Civic and business leaders should promote collaboration. They should toil together, transcending their creeds, to plant the seeds for doing good deeds. They should invest in programs that cut across and eliminate racial, religious, and socio-economic divides. Being here with those of you in higher education today, let me signify upon the pivotal role that all of you can play in helping India achieve its interdependence. I say pivotal because you can influence studies, students, and society through your good work. Your impact through research, writing, and teaching goes far beyond the walls of the university. It can go across India, and because of the growth of the Indian diaspora into the United States and around the world. You are a difference maker, empowering others to make a difference. I stand before you to say in all humility that the difference Aligarh Muslim University made for me is enormous, and that difference has prepared me to make a difference for all of you in the world. I know that you're already doing good and excellent work and committed to doing more through the Indo-US Center for STEM, Education, and Research. You are building that bridge. My wife Debbie and I are building others by establishing what Tariq said, Frank and Debbie Islam Management Complex at Aligarh Muslim University. We'll be going back to India in October to inaugurate the Innovations and Entrepreneurship Center in that complex and to dedicate the auditorium that bears our names in the Mass Communication Department at AMU. So through our civic engagement, we all involved directly or indirectly in efforts that can help save and preserve democracy. Over the past few minutes, I have focused primarily on the need to promote the Indian democracy, a unifying Indian nationalism, and a state of interdependence in India. There is a similar need to promote the democracy of the United States of America, a unifying American nationalism, an American state of interdependence. Unfortunately, the need here in the United States in these areas is greater, far greater than in India. This is true because in addition to suffering from white nationalism, populism, and identity politics, the US democracy have a serious case of Trumpism. Trumpism. This malady has infected the United States because President Trump captured the hatred, prejudice, and discontent that was present in the country and injected into it his own narcissism, self-interest, and promotions and ignorance of things governmental and the democratic process, and that is spread it across this country and throughout the world. I do not want this case of Trumpism to be fatal for the United States democracy. That is why, at the beginning of this year, I established the Frank Islam Institute for 21st Century Civic Citizenship. I created the Institute to address an increasing civic engagement deficit in the United States around the world and to enhance the concept of citizenship for the challenges and the opportunities of our times. 21st century citizenship is the active civic participation of citizens of all ages by being interested, issue-oriented, informed, and independent and involved. This institute has a website, publishes pivot point blogs monthly on important topics, issues a monthly newsletter, and will make annual Civic Engagement Champion Awards in collaboration with the National Association of the State Board of Education, the middle school, from across the United States, who are empowering the students in their classroom to be the citizens and the civic leaders of the future. I have covered quite a bit of ground in sharing my thoughts with you today. In closing, I want to leave you with one final thought. That thought takes us out of college classroom, away from the earth, into new territory. As you know, the 2019 was the 50th anniversary of the United States sending the Apollo 11 spaceship to the moon. President Kennedy inspired all of us to explore the new horizons, venture into the new horizon, and go to the moon. So when astronaut Neil Armstrong stepped out of the lunar module from that ship onto the moon's surface, he famously said, and I quote, "That is one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind." End of quotation. And it truly was. As you all know, the lunar lander from India, spaceship Chandrayaan-2, was unable to land on the moon successfully at the end of its long journey. That was disappointing, but it should not be viewed as a failure. It should be seen as a step forward towards India's making that giant leap at some times in the future. The leap will be an important work in terms of India's national pride, scientific capabilities, and a proof of nation's engineering prowess. In my opinion, however, the more important giant leap will be made by those of you participating in this LEAP workshop and by your predecessors and successors in these workshops. More important than what is learned in these workshops is what will be done with that learning afterwards. This LEAP workshop positions each and every one of you for a giant leap. What you can do with that leap will be up to you. I have every confidence that you will use your leap to find new ways to benefit the Indian society and to propel democracy forward around the world. I hope the thoughts that I have shared with you today will be helpful to you on your journey. Thank you for listening to me. May God bless you. May God bless India. May God bless America. And may God bless the democracy worldwide.
Thank you very much, Frank, for a wonderful